well. Denver, a lot better than expected. 5-4. It's very impressive compared to what I thought this roster was capable of. And, it's not an experienced team. It's not a complete team. But they've proved they're at least average. And, there may be a little bit of a struggle coming. Not really sure what their schedule is. I don't expect them to be in this the whole way, but it's great that they're in it right now. I would say that LA, the Chargers, are probably considered the best team in the division right now, with Vegas right behind them. And if Kansas City returns to form, they easily take that top spot again. Moving on to other NFL stuff. Before last week's NFL trade deadline, there was some movement on the Deshaun Watson front. His legal issues and the NFL pending investigation still remain, and those will have to be sorted out before any interested team makes a move for him. The Dolphins and the Panthers were the most talked about ones. Both said they're out for now, and obviously trade deadline passed, nothing happened with Watson. It'll be interesting to see who pursues him in the offseason. There are many teams that could use quarterbacks, and his talent could help a lot of teams, but you really need to see what the legality and what he's going to be facing with his off-the-field issues that arose. In baseball, the St. Louis Cardinals had that great 17-game winning streak. Manager Mike Shildt is a finalist for NL Manager of the Year, but he was also fired by the Cardinals at the end of the season. The Cardinals lost a wild card game to the Los Angeles Dodgers on a walk-off home run by Dodgers utility man Chris Taylor. Shildt worked his way up with many stops in the Cardinals minor league system as a manager and was promoted to the major leagues as a quality control coach in 2017. He has a pretty big background in scouting. Promoted to the bench coach in 2018 and named interim manager when the club fired manager Mike Matheny later that same season. Shildt was the NL Manager of the Year in 2019 after winning the NL Central, and he made the playoffs in each of his 3 seasons as the St. Louis manager. The Cardinals have hired bench coach Oliver Marmol as the team's next manager, and he becomes the youngest manager in the league at 35 years old. Speaking of Shildt, who was one of 8 people to become an MLB manager but not play professional baseball, his name surfaced as a possible replacement with the Padres and replacing Jace Tingler. Shildt, Ozzie Guillen, Luis Rojas, Mike Scioscia were all reported among the candidates to interview for the position, and San Diego went with A's manager Bob Melvin, meaning that there is a spot open with the A's right now that they will look to fill. In MLB front office news, the Chicago Cubs have hired Ahsan Bukhari as their new assistant GM, who was recently part of the Astros scouting department in front office and spent his time there largely working in player development. In the last episode, we talked about Ben Simmons reporting to the 76ers, and that situation continues to get messy and confusing. The last that I was able to see and hear was that Simmons seems to clearly want to trade and was kicked out of practice and was really just focusing on his own recovery. Since that time, the team brass has met with Simmons and discussed some of his issues where he said he had some mental health stuff that was going on, and they've kept him away from the team activities and resumed fining him, and he has not played this season. However, there may be a little bit of a change of heart as the most recent report from yesterday says that Simmons has agreed to meet with a team-recommended doctor to discuss his mental health. College football news, Texas Tech and TCU parting ways with their coaches. Texas Tech letting go of Matt Wells after a 13-17 record in just over 2 years in Lubbock. And he had a successful run as the Utah State head coach that led him to the job, but the Red Raiders had not played very well. Tyler Shuck, the quarterback, was supposed to take over and bring some stability to the position. That hasn't really happened. He's been splitting time with Henry Colombi. and neither one of them lived up to potential. Sonny Cumbie, former Texas Tech quarterback himself, took over as an interim, and now reports came in yesterday that Baylor assistant head coach and former Cedar Hill High School head coach in Texas, Joey McGuire, has been named the permanent replacement. TCU letting go of Gary Patterson after 20 years, building them basically from the ground up, taking them from the WAC to the Conference USA to the Mountain West, and joining the Big 12, winning plenty of Coach of the Year awards, whether nationally, conference-wise, all that kind of stuff, and winning 6 conference championships. And as I said on the Football Savant podcast, that unfortunately may have led to his own undoing, as the team wasn't really able to live up to its expectations in recent years, with their last conference title coming in 2014 and their last winning season with more than 7 wins coming in 2017. Assistant coach Jerry Kill takes over in the interim, and he has been a head coach at Northern Illinois and at Minnesota in the past. Positive coaching news: Scott Frost will be sticking for at least one more season with Nebraska. It was announced this week, but they have fired 4 assistant coaches, including offensive coordinator Mike Lubick, and former USC head coach Clay Helton, who was fired back in September, was named the new head coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles, placing Chad Lunsford, who was fired earlier this year after a 1-3 record. And time I wrote this script, the Eagles were 2-6 in the 2021 season. The last thing I'm going to touch on tonight is the retirement of San Francisco Giants catcher Buster Posey. Posey announced his retirement last Thursday. He is 34 years old, fantastic career behind the plate, and later in his career, after some injuries, as a first baseman and occasional DH. 7 All-Star selections, 3 World Series championships, 4 Silver Sluggers, Rookie of the Year, Gold Glove, just way too many awards to name. Probably a Hall of Famer, one of the best catchers ever. 5th overall pick in the 2008 MLB draft. So yeah, the guy was drafted while I was in high school, so that makes me feel old now. And he made his MLB debut in 2009, quickly became a staple of the Giants' run to the 3 World Series titles in the early 2010s, with Lincecum and Kane and Pablo Sandoval and Melky Cabrera and those guys. Unfortunately beat my Tigers once. And after a few injuries over recent seasons, he was never really the same player, still a pretty good player. But now he's decided it's time to retire and hang up the cleats after a remarkable career. The college basketball season tipped off tonight. I will have more thoughts on that on next week's show, as the games are still being played at this moment. So that's going to be all for the Travis on Sports podcast this week. I'll be back next week. I will make sure that the episode gets recorded next week and I make time for it to talk about more sports news. Until next week, you can find the show on Spreaker, Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, our Travis on Sports YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time on the Travis on Sports podcast.